Hello and welcome to the table, Baldurs Gate, D&D, and yes, Avatar The Last Airbender friends too, specifically for all the waterbenders out there in the crowd. Have a seat, grab your favorite drink, and settle in for a very unique modded character build and Warlock Subclass. This episode will be going through all 12 levels of the Formless Mother Warlock Subclass. Major credits to the mod author Nitro. I hope I pronounced your name right, friend. The theme of this build is to roleplay as a ruthless and power-hungry bloodbender who aims to please her bloodlust and to sate the hunger of her patron deity, the Formless Mother. Now, for those who are new to the channel, one of my main focuses for videos is creating unique Baldur's Gate 3 characters using mods both for enhancement and roleplay, specifically giving you more different types of replayability value for all of the different characters that you have in mind. Now, if that's something that you're really into, I would love to hear your personal favorite character builds in the comments below. Let's get a very in-depth discussion going, whether you're a fan of this type of modded class, what you would specifically multi-class this with, or any different character build requests that you have in mind. It can be completely different from the class that we're even going over today. If you love talking shop about those types of character builds, I would love to have you consider hitting the like, subscribe, and bell icon notifications for news on different types of classes in the future too. And also for the new viewers who may have stumbled upon this video, the way we will structure this character build is going through the starting level, levels 2 through 12, and then wrapping up with specific gear and equipment to complement the build, either in terms of roleplay and fitting it thematically, or specifically improving different stats or spells. And yes, side note, I will admit I'm not really too much of a min-maxer or getting into too much of a nitty-gritty with allocations and points and all that, but from time to time I'll take that into consideration if it means making the character better or to really, like I said before, to fit the roleplay while giving you some appropriate buffs as well. Now, the reason I'm going through all 12 levels only as the class itself is to truly showcase everything there is to offer, and also as a way to say thank you to the specific mod author of the modded class. And this is an added thank you. I will of course leave the link to this mod in the pinned comment below, along with some other mods used to pair well with this class. We will definitely be saving separate videos for multi-classing this modded class together with other modded classes, or even with base game vanilla classes to create different types of synergies. Now, a short bit of lore and backstory on the Formless Mother herself. She is technically an eldritch deity of the Elden Ring universe. However, we can definitely justify this as her potentially being an eldritch being of the world of Dungeons and Dragons, because hey, there are technically Cthulhu-like entities that do exist in the universe of Faerun, and specifically speaking of Cthulhu, I believe Cthulhu himself is even included in the deities of D&D, but D&D lore aficionados, please correct me if I'm wrong about that, or if there's a very minute detail. I don't mind being corrected on missing a few things or mistaking things too, because like I said before, I am a sucker for lore and different kinds of information for D&D and fantasy games too. Now, the Formless Mother is known to crave wounds and to bestow power upon accursed blood. And specifically in the Elden Ring game, she can be used to enhance a sacred spear, if I remember correctly. Elden Ring fans as well, let me know in the comments if I may have missed out any important details or lore regarding the Formless Mother that could definitely be relevant to this character build. Now, without further ado, let's get into the first level of this build. At first level, the race we will choose is actually a modded race from the Fantastical Multiverse mod, and specifically we will be choosing the Yuan-Ti Pureblood. Yuan-Ti are essentially snake people, very cunning, very devious, and also some of the sub-race features for the Yuan-Ti Pureblood are magic resistance, giving us advantage on saving throws against spells and other magical effects. poison immunity, immunity to poison damage, and also the poison condition itself. Incredibly powerful, both early, mid, and late game too. Plus, also we get innate spellcasting. You know the Poison Spray cantrip? You can cast Animal Friendship an unlimited number of times with this trait. Starting at 3rd level, you can also cast Suggestion with this trait. Once you cast it, you can't do so again until you finish a long rest. Now, it can be a bit of a stretch to say that Yuan-Ti could be waterbenders, but they most certainly, and I can personally see it myself, that they could make for very powerful bloodbenders, and it fits their characteristics too. Now, the subclass of the Formless Mother grants us different types of cantrips and spells, but before we dive into those, when it comes to the base game cantrips, you can decide to have Eldritch Blast, and I totally understand why you would go for it, but also, for thematic and roleplay purposes, having a mage hand, you could say that the mage hand is like forming from different types of water, or that you have a small amount of water that forms into mage hand to do stuff for you. And also Toll of the Dead, which fits the Yuan-Ti themselves with the necrotic damage too. Cause the sound of a Dolores spell to fill the air around a creature, dealing 1 to 8 necrotic damage, or specifically 1 to 12 necrotic damage if it's injured. I specifically like Toll of the Dead, and yes, this is another spell that is added from 5e spells, a very useful and a very fun mod that brings spells from 5th edition D&D into Baldur's Gate 3. It just really brings a whole bunch of replayability and appreciation for different types of cantrips and spells too. Now, speaking of additional spells and cantrips, the cantrip that you'll be getting from the Formless Mother subclass, and that's one of the reasons why I decided not to pick Eldritch Blast, is because, well, Blood Blast fills that role here. With 1 to 10 damage, launch a blood form projectile dealing 1 to 10 force damage and causing minor bleeding on a failed Constitution saving throw. Now, the fact that you have a cantrip that can potentially cause the bleeding effect, which essentially is damage over time, at the very start of the game, that is incredibly powerful for you as a first level character. And the complementary spell with that is Blood Shard, 2 to 12 force damage. Launch shards of blood at your enemies, dealing 2 to 12 force damage and causing the bleeding effect. On a miss, the shard of ice still explodes, and I'm assuming it still causes damage too. Now, one question I need to ask the mod author, and if any of you have played this mod as well, is if some of the buffs from that affect Eldritch Blast, I would hope that it would affect Blood Blast as well. But we'll definitely get there once we're leveling up our character. And for the additional spell that you can choose for yourself, for roleplay purposes and also for usefulness too in the early game, I would personally pick up Armor of Agathis, giving you 5 temporary hit points and deal 5 cold damage to any creature that may hit you with a melee attack. Now, you can justify this as saying it gives you water armor, and you can have water armor that hardens, that dishes back that cold damage, whatever you would personally want to roleplay it as. As for the background, for metagame and also not so much, you could also say it's roleplay purposes, I decided to go with Urchin, being a Yuan-Ti, a person that could be seen as like a dretch or someone on the side of the street, and essentially trying to make their way within society can definitely be difficult. So you get the skills of Sleight of Hand and Stealth, which are a +5 respectively for both, because we are dumping points into Dexterity, giving us higher initiative on battle and also a chance to dodge attacks. Constitution at a respectable 14, Intelligence and Wisdom we leave alone, and the main amount of points dumped into an ability will be Charisma, of course, as our casting modifier. with our other skill proficiencies being intimidation at a +5 because of charisma, and investigation at a decent +2. As I said in my previous videos too, let me know if you have different choices for stat allocation, spells, or cantrip choices too. Your opinions really do matter in the comments because having those present really just brings a lot of different ideas and also different ways to roleplay or just in general play a character. At level 2, we gain an additional spell specific to the subclass of Inside of the Mother to sacrifice 15% of maximum health to gain +4 spell DC. For the spell choice here, I would personally choose Hex as it plays really well into being a bloodbender and, well, causing disadvantage and hexing your enemies and just using their blood against them. Now, for Eldritch Invocations, unfortunately, Blood Blast doesn't scale like Eldritch Blast. I believe the mod author is in the works of updating it so it actually does scale, or at the very least will have the same status as Eldritch Blast and therefore can receive the benefits, hopefully, if the coding and opportunity is there for Blood Blast to receive the same benefits of Eldritch Blast, with Agonizing Blast to use our Charisma modifier for the damage, and also Repelling Blast, pushing enemies back. You can also choose to mix and match whichever spell you want to trade in and out here. At level 3, you gain a subclass specific spell called Swarm of Flies to do 4d16 piercing damage and bleeding to any creature caught within. This will pair really well with the Hold Person enchantment spell, the strategy being that you cast Hold Person to keep one enemy in place, and also they can't move or react, plus also any attacks within 3 meters are critical hits. This will essentially make them a living target for your Swarm of Flies. For the Pact boon here, you can choose whichever one that you want. I personally would choose Pact of the Chain just to have that extra ally in your party to fight alongside you. At level 5, your Chain Familiar will gain an extra attack. For the spell choice here, you'll get Blood Rune, which does 4d32 piercing damage. Summon a rune on the ground, which detonates when an enemy steps on it, causing that damage. And for the spell choice here, I would personally choose Hypnotic Pattern. Roleplay it as causing your enemies to freeze in place with your bloodbending spells. Eldritch Invocations, I personally also like Mire of the Mind, which allows you to use a slow spell to literally slow and reduce the speed of your enemies coming towards you. At level 6, you gain a subclass feature called Entropic Ward. As a reaction, impose disadvantage on an attack roll against you. If the attack misses, gain advantage on your next attack roll against your attacker for 1 turn. For the spell choice here, I would also personally choose Enthrall to reduce a creature's peripheral vision and make it look at you, or potentially even Crown of Madness, instilled madness in a human enemy, making them attack the closest creature by them, even if it's allied, for 10 turns. I'll definitely pick that one up. It's almost like you trying to force them to their will, and you're using their blood to essentially make them your puppets. Level 7 is when things get really interesting with Gift of the Vile Blood. Sacrifice 10% of your HP to regain spell slots. For the spells particular to the class itself, Vile Blood is 4d24 force damage, lash out at all enemies around, causing bleeding and stunning on a failed Constitution saving throw for 3 turns. On save, targets still take half damage but are able to use reactions. Bloodstorm is very powerful here too. call forth a bloodstorm, causing all caught within it to bleed. Additionally, the storm creates a cloud of choking blood, reducing movement, causing blindness, dealing 3 to 24 piercing damage to any creature whose turn is inside for 10 turns. For the spell gain here, I would personally choose Fear to kind of mess with their mind, and also to give you even more battlefield control. For the Eldritch Invocations, Dreadful Word is very useful here too, as Confusion affects a group of creatures and not just one single target. At level 8, my spell of choice here, while it's not necessarily bloodbending in and of itself, Banishment you could justify as summoning a portal of blood to take them to, well, the Blood Realm or a different plane of existence filled with blood, which does sound pretty morbid actually. And for the feat here, I would personally choose the Meta Magic Adept, which is included in Feats Expanded or Extra Feats mod pack. And basically it brings forth features from the sorcerer to allow you as a caster to have access to them. No, even if you're not dipping a level in sorcery itself, you do gain a sorcery point to spend on them. Meta Magic Quicken spell is very useful, costing only a bonus action instead, and Subtle spell too. You can cast spells while silenced. It's a nice little get out of jail free card. At level 9, we gain Soul Stealer whenever you deal a killing blow, heal for 10 hit points. For the spell choice here, you also gain Affinity, which is 5 to 60 damage. Hurl a coagulated spear at enemies, which explodes on impact, and causing bleeding, gaping wounds, stun, and crippled. Massive amounts of status effects here, so that's definitely a spell we're gonna pick up. For the other spell choice here, I like having Hold Monster, paralyzing a creature, can't move, act, or react, and it's like a little counterpart to the Hold Person spell. For the Eldritch Invocations, you can really choose whichever you want here depending on your personal playstyle. Now, this is a bit of a stretch, but Minions of Chaos, you could try to justify it as when you summon a water elemental. It's almost like you could say like you're trying to form water into a creature, or like you're summoning some sort of blood elemental. At level 10, the subclass features we get are Psychic Resistance and also Psychic Reflection. Patron doesn't appreciate attempts to attack your mind. When you take psychic damage, your attacker takes the same damage. The spell gain here, I would personally choose Counter Spell. You can justify it as saying that when an enemy caster tries to attack you, you're going to try to control their blood and have them try to resend the spell, essentially. And for the cantrip here, go ahead and choose whichever one you personally want here. Now, this can be a bit of a stretch, but Gust, you could say and roleplay that you're dipping a level into airbending if you really want to go that route. At level 11, the subclass feature we gain here is Invigorating Slaughter. Once per combat, regain 1 action point per kill. As for the Mystic Arcanum here, I personally like choosing Eye Bite. Eyes become black corridors walled with teeth, gaze capable of inflicting dread, sickness, or putting creatures to sleep. Essentially, you taking ultimate control over them. And as for the selected spell here, you could round it out to having Enthrall or one of the other spells if you want to justify it that way. Hunger of Hadar would be very good here too, as you can have those tentacles, or those tentacles essentially causing blindness and acid and cold damage. It's definitely a water entity. You could justify it like that if you really wanted to. At level 12, to round out the last spell, go ahead and pick whatever one you want here. I'm justifying Vampiric Touch as a potential blood spell, basically just going up close and personal and literally taking the blood right out of them. As for the Eldritch Invocations, Book of Ancient Secrets is a good one to round out with to gain Ray of Sickness, Chromatic Orb, and most importantly, Silence, casting these spells once per long rest and not expending any spell slots. As for the feat here, go ahead and pick whichever one you want. I decided to go with Telekinetic with Charisma. Learn to move things with your mind, increasing Charisma by 1, and casting the Invisible Mage Hand without verbal and semantic components, and also being able to throw creatures around telekinetically. Which, by the way, too, like, it was shown that it was done, and pretty violently and kind of concerningly in Avatar too. For a kid show, it was pretty insane at times, to be honest. Alright everyone, I know the choice in gear can seem very situational, but hear me out. It definitely fits the character thematically, and it plays very well with the playstyle of casting and blasting. So with the headpiece, I decided to choose Circlet of Mental Anguish. When an enemy fails a Charisma, Intelligence, or Wisdom saving throw against one of your spells or cantrips, you regain 1 to 4 hit points. And while that may seem very small in the long run, it really stacks up well with some of the other pieces of equipment here. The cloak piece, I decided to choose Wave Mother's Cloak, giving us Damp Aegis. During combat, once per turn, the cloak grants the wearer water layer protection until you take damage. This is a good little pair for Wave Mother's Robe as well. With temperature adjustment, you have a resistance to fire and cold damage, watery rejuvenation. If you're standing in water, you heal 1 to 4 hit points, which, by the way, you do also get the Create or Destroy Water spell, so cast that on the ground and use that as like your little stationary healing place. Gloves of Missile Snaring, this is your anti-range enemy gloves too. With Missile Snaring, you can intercept missiles from ranged weapon attacks, reducing their damage by 1d10 plus our Dex modifier, hence the reason why we decided to put a lot of our points into Dex at the beginning of the game. Wave Mother's Boots allow more watery rejuvenation if you're standing in the water surface from Create or Destroy Water. Gain 1 to 4 hit points, so the hit point regeneration is really just stacking here, both with the robe, boots, and also the headpiece, plus also with the Ring of Regeneration here too. At the very start, no condition whatsoever needed, just gain 1 to 4 hit points back. Spellcrux Amulet allows us to restore one of our blood spells, should we really need it in the clutch of combat, and Burnish Ring, specifically for role-playing as a bloodbender, gives us Paralyzing Ray, paralyzing our target for 2 turns. You can roleplay and justify this as having the spell and ability to literally use your opponent's blood against them and to freeze them in place, just like how it was shown in Avatar: The Last Airbender. Now, for the staff here, I decided to choose Staff of the Ram with 3 to 15 force damage. Once per turn, the blow possibly knocks a foe back 2 meters and stuns them. This has no effect on dragons or huge creatures, but hey, at the same time too, having that status effect of stunning your opponents really gives you a little bit of an extra edge in battle too. Also, I will admit, the look of our Yuan T's Bloodbender Warlock, that it's very intimidating and fits very thematically with her diabolical nature too. Alright everyone, that has been my build for this Bloodbender character. Let me know in the comments if there are some things that you would want to change, or also if you would like to see this class multi-classed with another modded class or with base game classes as well. Let me also know if you have any suggestions for different character builds that are separate from this class, or character concepts that you would love to see specifically. And if you love talking shop about those things, or if you want to see some Warhammer narrative campaigns in the future, which are some of my other personal favorite videos to do on this channel, and later on in the future some Elder Scrolls modded Skyrim playthroughs, I'd love to have you join us on those adventures too, friends. And remember to hit those likes, subscribe, and bell icon notifications, and I'll save you a seat at the table for the next adventure. Farewell, and take care.
you